Hi everyone, Heather here with Astrology with Heather.com, and I am back with another special video. And today I'm going to be talking about what it means to be born under an eclipse. So eclipses in the birth chart. And so this is going to be a pretty straightforward, brief video, but important nonetheless. Because I'm going to be talking about a specific subset of people who are born either on or within a certain period close to solar or lunar eclipses. And so before I get into that, I want to sort of define what the time frame of influence would be for a solar versus a lunar eclipse and for different types of eclipses, so that way you know if this is applicable to you. And the first and foremost, the way that you know whether or not you were born under an eclipse is to just Google it, like search it on the internet. I can show you how to see it in the birth chart, but that's a little bit more complicated. And so I'll save that for a later time or a different type of video. But in general, the easiest way to figure this out for the average person is to just do a Google search and see when the eclipses happened in the year of your birth and see if you had your birthday near an eclipse. From there, you can determine the time frame and whether or not you are an eclipse person with an eclipse chart. And I actually give a wider time frame than a lot of people because I find that people who are born just during eclipse season even, as long as they have a pretty close conjunction with the sun and the north or south node, they tend to still have this same type of experience and the same type of energy. But obviously, the closer you were born to a total eclipse or the exact eclipse point, the stronger this energy is going to be. And so for a total eclipse of the sun, which is an eclipse of the sun where the moon is very close to the earth, it's at its perigee, and it's completely covering the entirety of the sun, and it's an exact conjunction to the sun, the moon, the north or south node. For that type of eclipse, that's going to be the strongest eclipse. And I actually have found that people that are born within 1 week of a total solar eclipse are going to feel this energy very strongly, and they are going to exhibit the characteristics of being born under an eclipse. But the closer you're born to an eclipse, the stronger that energy will be. So being born exactly on the day of a total solar eclipse is by far the strongest eclipse energy that you can have in your birth chart. For the lunar eclipses, or for partial eclipse, let's go into solar eclipses. So annular eclipses are almost as powerful, but the moon is not as close to the earth. So it is in an exact conjunction with the sun and the moon, and with the north or south node. There is the moon is passing directly in front of the sun, but in this particular circumstance, the moon is farther from the earth, so there's going to be a ring of the sun around the moon, so it's not completely eclipsing the sun. However, it is still very powerful, and for an annular solar eclipse, I give it still like a 5-degree orb of influence. But I mean, I've seen people have effects of this for a week, afterwards. So it really just kind of, it depends on the astrologer and what their take is on it. But I think that it is powerful enough where you can experience it even a little bit beyond then. But at the minimum, I say 5 days from an annular solar eclipse, you'll be feeling that. A partial eclipse, 3 days probably would be the range there for a partial solar eclipse. And then you have the lunar eclipses. So the lunar eclipses are not quite as strong, or they're not considered to be quite as strong, but they still do have a really powerful energy. And so if you have somebody who is born under a total blood moon lunar eclipse during a time when the moon was very close to the earth, so let's say that the moon was at its perigee then during this full blood moon, then I would give it a 5-day orb. So 5 days before or after the lunar eclipse, you would be a person who would have an eclipse chart. If it's a partial lunar eclipse, I would say 2 to 3 days, and so that's kind of the frame of reference and the influence time frame that I would give it. But definitely very powerful if you were born within a few days of the eclipse. But again, the exact eclipse is going to be the most powerful. And so there are a few different things that are very much in common, or that people experience very commonly when they are born under an eclipse. And so the first thing is this sense that you are here to do something very important, or that you're here to do something very specific. Like you have a specific purpose and you're just sort of waiting for things to pull you in the direction of that purpose, and that your life is guided by fate, guided by destiny, or guided by some outside force that's bigger than you. And there's this innate sense that that is the case for people who have these eclipses in their birth chart. They're guided by something bigger. They're guided by destiny, and they'll have these major fated, destined moments in life where things happen that appear to be completely beyond their control, that transform their life, that turn their life upside down and throw them on a completely new path and new direction in life. And it's to the extent where it feels like you're living a bunch of small lifetimes within one big lifespan. And so I've even had clients who are born really close under these eclipses who have described certain events in their lives as having happened, or I'm getting all jumbled, who have described events in their lives as happening in a previous lifetime, right? And so even though it happened in this actual lifetime, it's almost as if it happened in a different lifetime, because their circumstances, their experiences, the way that they're showing up in the world, their identity, their perception, it's so completely different from the way that it was in the past that it's almost as if they're a different person living a different lifetime. And so people who are born under the eclipses will have these experiences where fate will step in and throw them in a completely new direction in life. But they thrive usually under these experiences because it's part of their natal energy, this eclipse energy, this fated, transformative, really intense energy of upheaval and transformation. It's almost like they feel more comfortable during these times of transition when something bigger is pulling at them, as opposed to times when things are just going along smoothly and are more objectively comfortable. And so they have these lives that are marked by destiny. They're marked by fate. They have a specific fated destiny or purpose that they are really meant to move into. And it's not necessarily that they're meant to do one specific thing. Sometimes they're meant to be pulled in multiple directions and have a lot of different experiences. And so that really depends on more detailed interpretations of the person's individual birth chart. But in general, that is the case. And people who have an eclipse in the birth chart, they tend to be much more independent or individualistic. They tend to do things in their own way or march to the beat of their own drummer. They're very purposeful and very driven. And they tend to appear to others to be sort of fearless, like they're just doing what they're going to do and they're just going to do it. And it's not in a way that's usually perceived as being overtly aggressive or like they're pushing people out of the way. Some people might express it that way if their charts have other indicators, but it's sort of like they have this sense of purpose, they have this sense of direction, and they are just going to do it. And if that is their fate, if that is their destiny, if that's what they're connected to, it's going to happen. And so there's not much that's going to stand in their way, not fear, not other people's objections to their behavior or their path. They're just going to do it. And so they're very purposeful in that way. And that's the case whether it's a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse. The lunar eclipse people, though, tend to enter their path or enter the spotlight even more reluctantly than the solar eclipse people, who will just jump in head first more often than the lunar eclipse people. But both of them, have this sense of purposefulness. So that's kind of the main takeaway of the eclipses. There's another side to this, though, where people who are born under eclipses, especially if they are like prominent politicians or public figures, they tend to not only be driven by fate and have these fated occurrences that influence them, but their energy and their actions and behaviors in the direction that they take in life tends to alter the destiny of groups of people or of humanity as a whole. And so these are people that really stand out when you think about them and their impact on the world at large. And usually they have very dramatic ups and downs and a very dramatic influence on the whole of humanity. Sometimes it can be positive, sometimes it can be perceived as negative. But in general, it's very powerful and it alters the course of human history in a lot of cases when you have a really strong eclipse and a really prominent political figure who's involved. And so examples of this would be like Karl Marx was an eclipse person. Donald Trump, more recently, is an eclipse person. Kate Middleton and Prince William are eclipse-born people. There are a lot of different examples of these types of people, and when you think about them, they really do have a substantial impact on either the mindset of our society or the direction in which a country or a group of people is headed. And so they have this sort of, it's almost like a fated, destined cause that they were meant to come here to alter the state of our reality in one way or another. And when it comes to an individual person, like individual people, just the average sort of person who is born under an eclipse, who's not somebody who's famous or doing something crazy that is being recognized out in the world in some sort of way, the average person born under an eclipse tends to alter the destiny or the fate of the people that they surround themselves with and interact with. And one could argue that they were meant to meet up and influence these people, and so that in and of itself was a fated sort of occurrence that came about. But they do tend to inadvertently have a very strong influence on the destinies of the people that they interact with and surround themselves with. And it happens without them trying to do anything. They're not like overtly trying to push an agenda or do something to influence the people around them. It just sort of happens that way. Their interaction and their energy being added to a situation changes its course and changes it in a way that is in alignment with the person's fate, or maybe it changes their fate in general. I mean, that's kind of up for interpretation, I would say, but it is an energy there. So that's my little spiel about the people that are born under the eclipses. I'm recording this under a Mercury retrograde, so my words got a little jumbled, but I'm going to keep it. I like it. So let me know if you were born under an eclipse. What is your experience with that energy? Do you feel like your life is being guided by something bigger? Do you notice that you have this strange sort of influence on other people in your life? Do you have these experiences where you've had this major turn of events that turns your life upside down and puts you in a new direction? I definitely want to hear from you. And so thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you want to book a reading with me, you can always do so. The link is down in the description below. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.